Welcome to the Open Door Policy Podcast. In each episode, we speak with all types of joyful missionary disciples who are unleashing the gospel in different and exciting ways. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and share our podcast with your family and with your friends. And today we sit down with Shannon Ochoa and Anna Carter, who are part of Eden Invitation. Shannon and Anna, it's great to have you on.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Danielle. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Danielle, normally we start sharing a little grace in our life.
Yeah.
And can I go first?
Yeah, please.
I had a couple of really good friends get married this past weekend.
Hey.
And that was like just a blast to be at their wedding, to share the joy with them. And one of them was Chaldean, so it had this very like
I think I know
like
whose wedding this
joyful
was.
Chaldean vibe that didn't start until like 10 p.m. at night. So it was a really different kind of wedding reception and party, but it was a great joy in my life. What's going on in your life?
You know what? Mine, I was thinking about this on my drive here, and mine isn't like, it's not going to seem spiritual, but I was like, but this is still a fun grace. I had a friend who he needs to go to a special event. So he asked me if I would go suit shopping with him, just because like he was like, I don't really know what I'm doing, and you seem to know a lot about this kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I love shopping. So I went suit shopping with this guy, and it was just really fun and beautiful to like share. It's not like intensely spiritual, but I feel like that's accompaniment, like just sharing life with someone and being like, you know, there in a happy way when they need you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Sharon, let's jump in and do our rapid fire questions. Anna and Shannon, are you ready?
Indeed.
All
Ready
right,
to go?
Anna, I'm going to take the first 5 with you. First one, what is your superpower?
Stop time.
All right, what do you remember about church as a kid?
Being told to behave.
Good. What was the last live performance you saw?
Hanson with a string orchestra.
Bop.
Which scent elicits an instant memory?
Pine.
Okay. Would you rather it was 100 degrees and humid or -10?
I'm from Minnesota, so I guess -10.
Okay.
All right, Shannon, your turn here. What are you praying for these days?
Constantly humility.
What's the first concert you went to?
Backstreet Boys. I think it was either their Black and Blue or Millennium. concert.
What's the most beautiful church that you've ever visited?
I love the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi, obviously in Assisi.
What item of clothing would someone be surprised to find in your closet?
Something floral. I wear a lot of black.
And finally, Shannon, what class could you teach?
Something social work on like human dignity, something along those lines, and empathy, all along that front.
Very cool. All right.
Perfect. That's
Thanks,
it.
ladies.
That's all 10. How do you want to do this? Do you want to go back and ask Anna, or I ask her? We're just going
let's
to
talk
open.
about it. Yeah.
Okay, pine. Talk to me about this pine. What scent are you remembering off of this?
You know, it's just really evocative, particularly like in a desert pine, especially. Like there's something about being in like the high desert, and there's kind of like this dirt. You can kind of smell the dirt. It's dry, but there's a really rich pine smell, especially from like bristlecone pines. I just have good memories of hiking.
It's a good pine. It's an outdoor pine, not like overly used like Pine Sol floor cleaner.
Oh, okay. No.
Your kitchen always smells so fresh and clean.
So this is like going into the wilderness with the pine trees that have been growing since, Jesus was walking the earth.
Yeah.
Across the globe.
They like
Those
saw
kind of
dinosaurs.
pines.
Yeah.
Shannon, what brings to memory, like what scent brings a memory for you?
My grandpa's pipe tobacco. It was a really big thing as a kid, right? It sounds like The Parent Trap when she quotes that.
Peppermint and pipe tobacco.
But he would take the pipe tobacco and he would like draw on our faces and stuff. And it was just a really fun memory. So I actually now will smoke the same pipe tobacco sometimes when I'm feeling nostalgic. So
A little scent.
Those are awesome
Yes.
memories of
Yeah.
grandparents like that. Yeah.
And so you've been to the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi. Assisi is hands down one of my favorite places in the world too. So what was your last time there and what was your experience?
yeah, so I was there, gosh, in I think 2016 on a pilgrimage. And St. Francis of Assisi, long story short, had a crazy impact on my life. When I was in college at a very public university, they taught a class on him. And it just taught me that holiness is possible from people who you may least expect it. And so then when I was there at the Basilica, I was just so moved by how his yes impacted my life and just what kind of yeses the Lord would bring forth going forward in my own.
Is he like a special saint for you, like even now today, kind of a saint companion you have?
Oh, 100%. He's my best saint friend, I would say, to say the least.
Anna, do you have a saint companion, saint buddy?
Gosh, I think some of my favorite saints have gotten like tacked on to Eden Invitation's patron.
Why not?
I think the St. Catherine of Siena was my confirmation saint. Our first blog went live on her feast day, so she kind of got grandfathered in for Eden Invitation too. But I really love Teresa of Avila, especially when you read her autobiography. She is just so sassy. And
I mean, St. Catherine of Siena isn't, exactly a soft
She's
and
not very,
gentle.
she's not a wilting flower.
also very true.
Yeah.
Get your booty back to Rome, please.
Yeah, I'm picking up a theme here. Danielle, you got St. Francis on your cell phone case.
I have St. Francis of Assisi on my cell phone case. He's my patron saint. Well, he's my confirmation saint. So
That's
good
awesome.
things. Well,
He's my phone background, so I got
Hey.
you.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, ladies, for doing rapid fire questions. So Shannon and Anna, we're so happy you're here, and we're talking about what the Lord's been doing in your life. It's rare that we have two guests at once, so I think Danielle will talk to Anna, and I'll talk to Shannon for this. But Anna, do you want to kind of start us off about like how the Lord has worked in your life, either at the beginning or more recently?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I grew up in a Catholic home and had a conversion, so to speak, as much as you can convert when you're 13, from a pretty already Catholic space. But I really encountered Christ at a young age. And just with my personality, I was a pretty tenacious youth group kid in high school. And just was really trying to pursue the faith from a pretty young age. But I think as with so many of us, there's just such a gradual maturing process. I ended up in ministry also at a pretty young age, right out of college. I graduated at 21 and kind of jumped right into ministry work. And so, I think a lot of my own story, has been the Lord revealing all of me. Just a few years ago, I had an experience where the ministry job that I had, I ended up having to quit kind of unexpectedly, and I felt very adrift. And I just kind of had this reality check. I actually spent a few weeks and I drove around the United States and camped in national parks and visited friends, and I think it was just this beautiful experience for me of really needing to reconcile with the fact that I'm God's daughter, not his employee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we've had similar summers. Continue.
And it's funny, it was kind of out of that space that Eden Invitation kind of came to be. And I know we'll talk more about that later. But I think for me, that's also a way that God continues to speak is in the wilderness times. I just was blessed to be able to kind of have a mini sabbatical this fall, still keeping things on track with our apostolate, but also trying to get in some writing projects. I got in a lot of hiking out in the American West, and some camping and just some really good time in solitude in those desert places. And that's just a way that God continues to speak to me, just in the midst of that natural beauty.
I feel like maybe something that we should say is, whereabouts are you guys? Because you're actually not Detroit guests.
No, nor, I'm sad to say, am I an American West guest. I would like to live up by the mountains, but we are headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is also a good city, so it has its own merits.
Milwaukee.
Yeah, it's a nice place.
Home of Laverne and Shirley, I think.
I don't know.
The hit 80s TV show.
Oh, wow. Look at that. That's awesome. Okay, so you're still in active ministry now, or is that something that you're not doing right now?
Yeah, so myself and Shannon are both full-time with Eden Invitation.
Perfect. Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And what was one of the most beautiful things that God said to you while you were out hiking?
Oh, gosh, which time? No, I think, he just speaks, just in that time of wonder, I think, in a lot of ways, just the recognition of, just like his goodness and his glory, and that in the midst of something just radically beautiful, like he's made that for me. He's made that for us to delight in him, and for us to know his goodness, to know his steadfastness in the mountains, for us to know like his grandeur, like in the valleys, just to know that he is God.
Yeah. I think of, sorry to jump in here, Danielle, but I think of like just reading the book of Exodus, where God calls his people out into the wilderness, into kind of, into nature, into like away from civilization. And it's a time of like great intimacy with the Lord for his people, right? Where he can speak to them in a way where there's just not all the distractions. And I know some people can like use nature as a way to say like, well, I don't need to go to church. My church is the Cathedral of the Oaks or the Pines or whatever, Zion National Park. But there's something wrong about that. But there is a very deep and profound way the Lord can speak to us when we put away distractions and kind of go out into the wilderness, and we're just kind of more ready to hear his voice at times. I feel that way too, Anna. So that's it's just cool to hear how the Lord worked in your life in that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Shannon, what, tell us a little bit about your journey to the Lord.
Yeah. I think if there's one word to sum it up, and I'll obviously expand on it, it's the understanding of goodness, inherent goodness. I think as a child, I identified a lot with Matilda.
Matilda is the story of a little girl with wondrous intelligence who is very different from the rest of her family.
I loved her story, and I honestly looked kind of like her.
This is the cutest.
Right? And my parents would jokingly move around milk cartons as if I were magic like her. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And I had wonderful parents, but I think a lot of her story was this quest to know her goodness, right? Mm-hmm. Just amidst some adversity. And so I think for me, I grew up in a Catholic family, but just primarily receiving the sacraments, but really fell in love with my faith when I was younger, went into my youth group. And, for me, part of my experience related to Eden Invitation, just realized I was attracted to women while I was younger. And it was during a time when it was really heavily politicized. Conversations around legalization of same-sex marriage were coming out. And the intensity with which it was talked about, I really began to question my own inherent goodness, and really, really wrestled with that. And so honestly, for me, I wanted to hide that in shame, and anything that seemed to, point out what was felt to be like a flaw or something. I just wanted to hide it. I wanted to be as perfect as I could be. And I just really carried that with me for a lot of years. I carried that into college. I went to a large state school where I just got swept up in the party scene as part of it, of trying to like hide those seemingly imperfect elements of my life. And I just grew really restless and weary. Thanks be to God, I had really good missionaries who spoke the Lord's goodness over me, but encountered it most, I think. I reached a point of restlessness. I was like asking questions about the faith. The church wasn't talking a lot about same-sex desires necessarily, especially on the context of a public university. I like took on a gender women's studies minor, all of that. And I just grew really, really weary and restless trying to find answers everywhere. I just went before the Blessed Sacrament one day, and the Lord just spoke so profoundly over me that I was good, and that I had a place in his church. And so I think, every day it's ongoing, always surrendering that, allowing the Lord to speak his goodness over me. And it's just funny too, because honestly, it's like the transcendental that I would say I like see the most in others. It just like comes so naturally. Yes. Like I can just see the Lord's goodness. I can see his goodness in others. I can see it in the world around me. And the Lord, I think in my current journey is he's like always unpacking how I see that in myself. And so that's kind of the way that the Lord has moved in my life, and he's ever unfolding that story.
Is that still a place where you encounter the Lord in the Blessed Sacrament in times of adoration?
Yes. Yeah. And I wish I had more access to it. We don't have many perpetual adoration chapels in Milwaukee. So,
you know where they have a lot of perpetual adoration chapels?
Detroit.
In Detroit. Just saying, Shannon.
You guys are always welcome. But thank you for sharing that part of your story too. And I guess like to tag on the message, I'm so glad you're a part of our church. I'm so glad that you're sharing your story with us. I mean, I just get goosebumps hearing you guys share. So thank you so much. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your apostolate. What does your apostolate do? Who is the community that you're serving? Tell me everything.
What's it called?
Yes.
Yeah. How do we find it on social media? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So it's Eden Invitation. You can find it at edeninvitation.com. But we are a movement for young adults, Christians, Catholic, experiencing same-sex desires and gender discordance, seeking to live a life of discipleship in pursuit of Christ and his church. And so kind of what we do is we offer a space where we can receive the whole person, grow systems of mutual support, and empower people for mature Christian discipleship. How we practically do that is so each person who reaches out to us, we take a call. We do an intake call, just knowing the need for interpersonal connection, especially within this particular area of your life. It's oftentimes either very hidden or, when we talk about it in the church, sometimes it feels like you wonder if anyone can see you sitting there in the pew. So we always offer that first. We offer opportunities for community through our online book clubs and through our retreats. We did a backpacking trip this summer. And even to local communities, little local hubs where people can be empowered in their proximate community. And then we also, too, just want to empower people to get to know their gifts and the ways in which they can be called to serve the church, the ways that they can grow as disciples through prayer. So it's kind of a little bit of like the gist of what we do, rapid fire. But
Tell us about the name. How'd the name come about?
A brainstorming session. But no, we think it kind of encapsulates our posture and our position, you could say. I think position in the Eden element of it, we're really inspired by the work of St. John Paul II, his personalism, men and women he created them, love and responsibility, as well as he's kind of taking the long view anthropologically about different sexual questions, and so really trying to invite people back to the beginning, this original sense of what it means to be a person. And we've actually had some people that have been wrestling with their gender that have reached out to us as well for that very reason. They've said, you're not just leading with same-sex attraction. You have this whole person perspective. And I think I could maybe find a place here. So that's been really beautiful. Kind of anybody culturally defined, so to speak, as LGBT, kind of all over that spectrum is a part of Eden Invitation. And then posture wise is the invitation. Shannon kind of alluded to this, but especially in our culture today, things can so easily come across as polarized, whether that's in the church or in our politics. And so we really want to be just in a position of receptivity, but also kind of standing firm in who we are too, and saying, okay, this is what the church has to offer. We think it's good, true, and beautiful. We're not going to force you into anything. Come and see.
Right.
Yeah.
Another question is, great mission statement, great vision, but I know that when you're working on these things and with your missions, it's like, frankly, often like quite the journey, right? So like, you didn't wake up and were like, hey, let's get together, let's do this full time, let's do it this way, this way, this way. What was kind of the process? And I know it's like a daily process, but like, what were kind of the things that got you where you are today?
I think the first thing was we both had like separate individual stirrings. I think I kind of started it, I guess. I catalyzed the conversation. But so just in my background in ministry, I had taught high school morality at a Catholic high school, and you have to have the sexual morality unit, and you teach lessons on this, and I think for me, it was challenging, I think, for a couple of reasons. I think one, there was this fear that I was going to be found out. I think we live in a climate where it is kind of complicated to be open about experiencing same-sex attraction in our church, for a lot of reasons. And we can go into that later if you want. And so I was kind of afraid, like, if people knew this, could I chaperone a field trip? Like what are people going to think? And, but I think there was more than that. There was a desire, for young people to know that this life is possible, that this teaching isn't crazy, the church isn't being a jerk, that people are actually doing this, and young people too. I think there's a number of testimonies that are out there that you can find, and they're really beautiful and they're really powerful. But they're also from a particular age of person, from out of a particular cultural space. And so I think, what maybe some of the older testimonies experienced in the 1970s is not necessarily identical to what some young people are experiencing today. And so there could be a disconnect. And so really wanting also to showcase, or to kind of show like a younger stories, younger perspective. And so that was kind of the first impetus, was to kind of give testimony, right? To bear witness. Modern man listens more willingly to witnesses than to
Saint
teachers.
Paul the Sixth.
Yeah.
So Danielle and I like both know people who are either, striving to live the church's teaching but have same-sex attraction, or maybe have like turned away from the church because they've adopted a way of living and a set of values, a culture that is that doesn't see the gospel and the call to chastity, the call to Christian morality as good news. And part of the podcast, we call it Open Door Policy, is to talk about things that, to have an open door conversation about what needs to be talked about and what's going on in the church. So I'd love to hear, like, from you guys, from Shannon and Anna, how people receive this, like when they reach out to you or when you give a talk. Like, is it received often as good news? Are there a lot of questions? Do you get people who kind of see you as the enemy of freedom, of living, quote unquote, true to oneself? Just wondering what your experience of reactions has been to your presenting John Paul II's theology of the body in this kind of in this way to people who experience these attractions.
I think it's definitely a mix. I think you have people there that are just saying, like, thank God, like, praise God that you're sharing this. And, we've been waiting to hear from somebody who experiences this. There's definitely people who are like, that's good for you. I'm glad it's working out for you, but I don't know about me, or I don't know about my friend, or I don't know about this family member. But I think one of the things we also try to do, yes, we kind of give this, give the teaching and all of that. But I think we also really try to be honest about the pain points. Yeah. I think that's been one of the issues, but one of the problems I think in some ways is I was going to say it's not a bed of roses, but maybe it is a bed of roses, it's the buds and the thorns, and so to be honest about some of those pain points, I think, in our talks or in our presentations or in our formation, because I think it's when we're honestly talking about what are those struggles, what are those challenges, that I think can help people to better live it out in their lives, better integrate the teachings in a healthy, holy way. Yeah. But I think it can also open up avenues of dialogue for people that are on the fence or people who are walking away and they're saying, oh, at least, okay, you see this.
It's not being whitewashed, right? Or it's not being kind of hidden.
Right. Father Steve and I were talking. Archbishop Vigneron wrote a pastoral note to our brothers and sisters who experience same-sex attraction. And one of the things that he exhorts us as the community of faithful is to support each other, right? And also to serve each other. And I was wondering, in your experience, not to throw anyone under the bus, but what have you found, like your community, like your church community, your family community, your friends, what have you found has been supportive to your faith? Maybe what has been a swing and a miss, but not to throw anyone under the bus, but where do you see faithful people? Just imagine someone like me, right? What does support look like? What does love look like in these situations?
Yeah, I think one, that's a beautiful question. I'm just incredibly attentive to, I don't know. I think a couple words came to mind as you were speaking. I think, I'll give kind of the swing and the miss and how we can actually move forward. Mm-hmm. I think one of the words is the word fear, I think came to mind. I think oftentimes, we're afraid to be we don't, whether our brothers and sisters experience same-sex desires, gender discordant, sometimes we're afraid to ask where they need support or to ask, to dialogue even. And we get afraid to touch the topic altogether. We don't really discuss it much in community settings, whatever that may look like. And I think in some ways that's a miss, right? In the sense that it's a missed opportunity to know what people need, for people to actually dialogue a little bit more about it themselves as well, if it is their own experience. And so I think, again, that sense of fear. And so to be able to, if someone shares this with you as part of their own story, to be unafraid to ask them, how's that going in your life? If it's somebody who's striving to pursue the faith and the church's teachings, to be unafraid. They brought that up for a reason. Yeah. How can I support you? What are some of the challenges to your discipleship right now? And that might not even be this topic. Right. Sure. And to be open to that. Yeah. And then I think too, just additionally to be able to, I think as well, be attentive to, I think being creative with the gospel and with people with this experience. And what I mean by that is, one, when we do a lot of outreach events and stuff, or even as community, as church, I think we can do community a little bit more radically in some ways. Oftentimes when we have events for young adults, I think sometimes people get a little afraid. They become somewhat of meat markets. And somebody with this experience, might be a little bit more nervous to enter into that setting. Yeah. And just to be attentive to what are some of the events we're offering as church, and how are they reaching more than just the average Joe. I don't know. Right. And so to be creative with that, creative to inviting people into our homes, and to trust in the creativity of God as well, and how he wants to use his children in the church. Again, people with this experience.
Do either of you have any signs of hope that you've seen, things that have not been a swing and a miss, or ways things have changed, or experiences you've had with in the church, people who have gotten it right or have shown that kind of compassion?
Yeah, I think one of the things that strikes me is the movement in general towards community. I think is really important. And it hasn't necessarily made the trans. I think we all need it.
Right.
For sure. But I think especially for people who are experiencing same-sex desires, especially if it's exclusive and predominant, and, the single life, it may well be like single in the world, that's going to be their life. I think the growing emphasis that we've had in the church on interpersonal community, on being honest and authentic in those places of community. I think I'm using a lot of buzzwords here, but they're buzzwords for a reason because I think they're starting to happen. I think that is really, really essential for our pastoral response. If we want people to be in the church with this experience, it's like, hey, we're all here. There's multi layers of support here. So I think that movement as a whole in the church is really hopeful. And I'm also inspired too by, there's just a few different dioceses that are really making efforts around the gender questions, trying to really get out ahead of how that's happening in culture. That's not exactly everything that we do at Eden Invitation, but there's a few different dioceses I've seen that have done a lot of like conferences that are trying to really bring in like multidisciplinary experts to say, hey, this is starting to percolate in our culture. How can we get out ahead of it? Yeah. Right? Because I feel like so often we're playing catch up.
Like reactive.
A lot of things. But I think that's a sign of hope too, is saying, hey, how can we be proactive here?
Thank you. Guys, just as we wrap up, I want to say that how much I appreciate you and appreciate you guys being here. I can only imagine the struggle. Like I think about in my life, like there's kind of like the outside culture and then the inside church culture. And even though like secular culture thinks I'm crazy, like I still am fortunate enough to have like, the church being like, but you seem cool to me. Right. And like, I can't imagine how hard it would be to carry both. Right. Like you mentioned, that fear of being found out and then, and what that means on a lot of levels. So, again, thank you for being in our church. Thank you for being brave. Usually as we close, we ask our guests if they would, if they have a word or a prayer for our listeners. So for the folks who are listening today, sorry.
Before you do that, can you just say your website or your contact information one more time?
Yes, www.edeninvitation.com.
Perfect.
And you can find that, again, Eden Invitation on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
That's great. You know what, just before
we steer clear of Twitter.
And just one last little comment, Unleash the Gospel is at the heart of everything we're doing here in Detroit. And I know one thing that stands out to me as I think about this is how the Archbishop calls us here to have, the work of mission in the church involves everyone. And he says there are no bystanders. And so it's great to hear from you who have this particular aspect of your life, these inclinations and desires, and knowing that you're called not just to be kind of a passive member of the church, but the Lord has called you to share the gospel with people that you meet, with people who you've come to know, and with those that you seek out. So I think you guys are just a beautiful witness of living that call to not be bystanders in the church, but to be part of sharing the gospel with those, with everyone you meet. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
And as Danielle was saying, we give our guests the last word here. So any final word you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah. So many words. This went so fast, you guys.
I know.
Gosh. No, I think just the recognition, I think just the recognition that this topic is not just outside the walls of the church, but that we're here.
Yeah.
We are here as with everything, right? I mean, I think we all experience an ache for the infinite that gets twisted in a variety of different ways.
Yeah.
That's all of us. And I think to recognize that, that people with this particular experience we're here, we're in the church. This isn't just an out there issue. And just to keep us in your prayers, especially in a really challenging culture in a variety of ways. Just to keep us in your prayers and just know too that We're here at Eat Invitation too. We're praying for the church. We're praying for people with this experience, and we pray for all of them. So if you're listening to this and you have a family member, you have a friend, and just the way that they're living their life is breaking your heart, just know that we are praying for them.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, brave women.
Thank you.
It was so great having Anna and Shannon with us, and to hear how they are integrating their experiences and their desires and attractions into the truth of how God has revealed for us to be happy, the truth of his moral law, and the beauty of John Paul II's theology of the body. Praise God for their beautiful witness, and for you, our listeners, for hanging out with us.
And once again, before we say goodbye, if you liked this episode, please share it with your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, your Trader Joe cashier. You can also leave us a review on iTunes. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is @OpenDoorDetroit. Help us unleash the gospel. Open Door Policy was produced by Ron Pangborn and the creative team of the Archdiocese of Detroit.
He is just so sassy.
I'm Father Steve Polis with Danielle Center.
And this has been another episode of Open Door Policy.